never cultivated in the garden. He tended the garden, but he never disturbed the ground. And when man got disconnected from God, he began to till the soil. The whole issue is so very simple. It's all about cover. Nowhere in nature where man has not been do you ever see exposed dirt. That only happens when man comes and takes the cover. Everywhere in nature where man has not been, it's either covered with needles and leaves or grasses, but the ground is covered. And the reason is because the ground is a living organism. And as all living organisms, such as ourselves, we have skin to protect us. The animals have fur. Fish have scales. Birds have feathers. And the soil is a living organism. And God has designed it and made it so it's always covered with something. And when you take the cover off, it becomes vulnerable and it gets lost. And this is the thing that amazes me about us as intelligent human beings, how we don't see it, because we've been experiencing it for thousands of years in a negative way. We're all around us, all through creation. Everything's just growing beautifully with no work. And we work hard to fail. When we came to the Midwest here 200 years ago, there was 8 to 12 feet of beautiful topsoil. I mean, gorgeous stuff. And if you ever flown across the Midwest, when you look down at the ground, it's almost scary. It's just parched, cracked, hard, totally desolate. Almost looks like desert. There's 8 inches of topsoil today because it's all blown and washed away, and they're still cultivating. This is not working. We're losing topsoil. And topsoil in nature, it takes 100 years to build an inch of topsoil. I mean, it is criminal and incredibly devastating what we've done to the planet. But we built a house and we faced a real challenge. We drilled a well, went 213 feet and got half a gallon a minute. And if you're doing the math and thinking about that, that's not enough water to do a garden. I'll never forget as long as I live. It was August 1979. You know, it was a great year to build a house. It didn't rain all summer, but boy, in August, all this grass was totally dead. The road coming in was all dust. And I'm looking at that and saying, God, how am I going to grow fruits without water? And it was so incredible. I hear inside, it says, well, you're looking at the wrong thing. Turn around and look at your trees. And I pushed enough out when I built the house that I knew they had shallow roots. And I says, you know, God, you really have my attention. If you can show me how you do these without irrigation, I can do an orchard. So I went out to the woods of the Fork and I started moving this material underneath the trees, and I was totally amazed. This beautiful, soft, black, damp, incredible compost. When I saw that, I says, well, I can do this. This makes sense. So I started planting the trees out there, and at that time I had, straw and sheep manure. Now I'm using wood chips, and it's been amazing. This orchard's been here 31 years now. It's never been watered or fertilized once. It goes through droughts or whatever, and it's just every year it gets better. As I was doing this orchard, experiencing these incredible results, because I was a creature of habit, and because our nature is to do things as we were taught and not to inquire from God, I says, okay, God, thanks for the help, but I can handle this on my own. And so for, I think, probably 17 years, I was out here diligently rototilling, hauling in organic material. You can see a place over here, my major rock pile. This is my altar. This is where all the rocks that came out of my garden over here. And I'm just doing this stuff, and I'm feeling I'm on this treadmill, just running in place, going nowhere, feeling like, oh, I'm going to keep up with this. Every spring, the ground is totally muddy and wet. When I tilled it, it turned to weeds in 5 to 7 days, solid green with weeds. I planted things 3 feet apart so I can rototill with it, do the weeding with the tiller, and it was just labor intensive. And one day I got out my orchard. I don't know what motivated me. I got on my knees and I started moving these wood chips, and I'm down to my elbow in this beautiful black compost. And I got up and started screaming. I was so angry. I said, there's something wrong with this picture. I have been killing myself to get this in my garden. I don't have it. I didn't do anything here. And I hear inside, well, it works in your garden the same way. You didn't ask. I was so angry. I threw that tiller away and I started covering my garden with wood chips. My name is Paul Гаучи, and I was raised as a gardener. My parents grew all of our food in Los Angeles as I grew up, and I remember as a 5-year-old kid, my dad on Saturday morning waking us up and saying, well, we got to head off into the horse stables and get some horse manure today. So we went down to a rental yard and got a trailer and went to the horse stables and loaded up manure and came home and spread it out in the garden and spaded it in. And as kids, we wore shovels out, spading in heavy clay ground, mixing soil. And that if I try to help nature at any level, I mess it up. My approach now is just to look what it does, and it says, talk to me, show me what you're doing, because I want to copy it, because it does it the best. I have 2 properties that I'm doing this on. This one here, the ground is clay and rock. It would be impossible to farm. It would be considered, from the agricultural point of view, as marginal soil. The other place I have is 80% rock, totally gravel pit. You couldn't possibly till it. You couldn't possibly cultivate it. And in both of those places, I'm experiencing the most incredible, beautiful gardens. I love that scripture where it says, as we behold the Lord, we're being changed from glory to glory. And I find that anything that comes in contact with God gets changed, including clay and rock and rock. It's just so awesome to take people and take them back and show them my incredible ground. You can't even break with a pick and walk on this stuff. It's totally buoyant. Everything's just growing great, you know. And I didn't do anything. I just put the cover down and God does it all. Whatever organic, natural thing you have at your disposal, it will work. And I've used everything from straw, grass clippings, leaves, animal manures, rocks. But having used them all, I come back to wood chips and I see where it's been for a while and what it's done. It is my favorite. It just is the nicest thing to use. First of all, when I speak of wood chips, I want to delineate between wood chips and other things that people put in the same category, such as bark or shavings or sawdust. Wood chips, when I say wood chips, I'm referring to branches that have been chipped. Branches of trees, which is about 90% needles and leaves, that have gone through a chipper or a tub grinder. What I find quite interesting is that the issues we have in agriculture, and I'll just list them: soil preparation, fertilization, irrigation, weed control, pest issues, crop rotation, pH issues. None of those issues exist in nature. And what I'm finding at my place, none of them exist here either. And I feel just so thankful to be set free from that. I mean, there's no tilling, there's no digging, this is it. This is the only tool I need.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it is awesome.
My roses love it.
Everything loves it. Well, I just went to the place where they make all this good compost and got a nice load of it. The last time I put this here was about 3 years ago. And I think with this application, I'll probably go maybe 4 or 5 years. I'm finding that this stuff is like compounding interest. Soil preparation, when you put the wood chips down, they never compact. They're always soft. Every year I come out to my garden, all I need is my rake and just grate it out, make a little groove and plant my seeds. Because the air is always present, because it never compacts, it never has to be prepared. You come to a place where you've got you've garden, and your garden at the end of the year is all hard again. So you bring in this really nice organic material, fertilizer, manures, whatever. You till it in. You got this really fluffy, nice aerated material. You're so happy. Oh, what a nice garden! You get out to your rake and you plant. Your stuff comes up. As the year progresses, when you get to the end of the growing season, that ground is right back to where you started. It's all compacted and hard again.
So I tilled in these beautiful potato chip wood-colored orange wood chips into my garden last spring, and I wasn't too successful. My soil test says that I'm way down in nitrogen. Because I tilled those wood chips in, I tied up all the nitrogen in my soil. But now I know you never till this stuff. You just add to it.
Fertilization, because of the compost material, every time it rains or you water, compost tea is being deposited into the soil, so you have a constant input of fertilization going on. Just not having a fertilized feature, to me, is just so amazing and such an incredible gift in this kind of stuff. And last year I had such an incredible experience, a real revelatory time. I had planted a row of spinach in the spring and it came up really nice and we enjoyed it. And I pulled it out and planted another one. It came up, the next one came up bigger and nicer than the one before. And then I was getting ready to pull it up, and one of my neighbors was talking about this black Spanish radish. It was so good, so I planted that for her. And that came up, and she couldn't believe the size and how beautiful that was. And I'm looking at this, and I'm just contemplating what's going on. And she says, now, God, talk to me. Every time I planted in the same row this year, each one was bigger and nicer than the one before, and I didn't fertilize. This is so opposite of what my experience is in gardening. Whenever I planted something was taken out, I had to put something back. And here I'm putting nothing back, and each planting is bigger and nicer than the one before, Whenever you buy fertilizers, there'll be 3 numbers or 3 things that they're analyzing in the fertilizer, and it's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Nitrogen is what gives the green, the good vigorous growth. The phosphorus is what creates the budding and the flowers and the fruit production. And the potassium is what gives hardiness and health and strength to resist disease. And all those things are important to be in the soil for the health of the plant. Chemical fertilizers, even though they have the numbers that say they're adequate in these features, do not have minerals. And so the plants that are growing without minerals don't have those in them, so they don't have the nutrient qualities that plants that grow in organic soil do. You see, when they came with chemical fertilizers, they told the farmer, you can have this immediate lush growth now. And they were right. What they didn't tell you down the road using these chemical fertilizers, that every year you had to use more and more to get the same effect, and your ground eventually became sterile. When you use the organic approach up front, it's kind of a lot of work to bring in those wood chips, because you got to cover the ground. It takes a lot of cover. But over time, what I found at my place is that you start having this incredible gain. Initially you put a lot down, and you have to, in a few years you got to put it back again. But I'm finding that each time I put a layer on, it's a lot longer before I have to do it again, because I have this incredible base built. Irrigation, well, the rain does great, as it does everything out there. Nature does everything with rain, and so it is here. Now in the summertime, when I'm planting seeds out in my garden, because it's dry on top, I'll water initially to get them up. But once they're up, I stop watering.
There are a lot of problems with irrigation. One is that it's a lot cheaper or easier. It's a lot easier just to waste water. Spray the water through the air, or dump too much water on the ground, and it'll infiltrate, and it'll sort of disappear, and so you're not bothered by it. But I think the last thing I heard was that irrigation on the whole is something like 50% efficient. It's about 50% of the water is getting to the crops. And now that water's getting scarce, and we're running out of water in a number of places around the world. We're actually the North China Plain, for example, lots and lots of those farmers are going out of business every year.
The idea that we can use wood chips and reduce our water use by 95 to 99% is just really exciting. That's something that my friend Paul has proven over the years, and something that we're doing here as well now. Even in the short time, we've certainly seen water holding capacity and growth attributable to the fact that we've heavily mulched a lot of our plants.
And you see how it's damp down in here. So these tomatoes have never been watered, and won't be watered all summer. You can drive a truck on it won't compact, and it just gets better and better and better. Here, have some of these tomatoes. They're starting to get ripe. This is what I get so blessed by. Look at this. Look how damp this is. And this is August. And it's going to stay this way. It'll never dry out. And this is why I don't have to water. We're in dirt. You won't experience this. It's going to be compacted on top. You dig down, it's dry. But look at this beautiful material. In nature, the ground, it maintains and holds that water, so it's always there. It's always available to plants on a continuous basis because of the capacity to hold it, And watering from the top is so counterproductive in a garden situation, because that's just, not as effective as, sub-irrigation or material that holds water, so you can just live off the rain. The rainwater is a superior water. Groundwater never compares to the benefit of good rainwater. And if you've ever done a garden, you see after it rains, everything just grows great. Nothing like when you watered, So if you can live on that, that's the best. You'll find with wood chips the incredible advantages. There's no sponge that'll hold water like wood chips. I'm amazed at the water it holds. And for example, we live in a place where we're just 70 miles down the road, there's a rainforest. It gets 15 feet, I'm not saying inches, 15 feet of rainwater a year. And when you walk in the woods, the forest there's no water near your feet. It's not spongy, it's not damp, it's damp, but it's not soggy. And it's amazing, those wood chips totally absorb that kind of water quantity. Another thing that's amazing about wood chips is when there's not enough, it's like now if you look at my grass out in the front, it's all brown, but in the wood chips in my orchard, it maintains the moisture. And here's the incredible thing about God and his design. When there's too much water, the wood chips displace it, and when there's not enough, it retains it. Water is such an important thing. We couldn't live without it, and I think it's quite interesting, the ratio and how it is on the earth. 75% of the earth is water. Our bodies are 75% water, and what I'm finding in my produce and fruit, it's 75% water. And I'm seeing a real connection here and a real balance. And what's interesting in plants that are growing in dirt, that are irrigated with water, they don't have that water content. And I've discovered the reason is that we see in dirt, because it's compacted and hard, roots can't develop like they would like to, and so they're pretty compacted and not very spread out. But in this environment where there's so much air in the ground and it's so porous, the roots just spread everywhere. And because you have this very large root system, it's able to take up all this water. I've always said that the amount of water in the ground has nothing to do with what's going into the plant. Because you could have, heavy clay ground, which is what I have here, and I could be watering all day long, and it's not going to go in the plant because the ground's so compacted, there's no root system. But in this stuff, because the ground is so porous, I don't need the water at all because the roots are everywhere, drawing such a wide area. They're taking up such a huge amount of water, so it doesn't matter about how much water is in the ground. It's because of their capacity to take up, and that's what's so key. And this is what I just find just such a pleasure. Anything I pick, you break it off or you bite it, and just juice and water just flows out of it. And that's how it's supposed to be. That's really the design. And it's just so important for us to be hydrated with our food and to be getting enough water. And like I say, the stuff you buy in the store, it just doesn't have that water content.
You got to water 2-3 times a week, depending on what the temperature is, what your soil is, and sometimes more if you have sandy soil. And Paul never waters. Never waters. It's you go out there and it just blows your mind. Just blows your mind.
You see, because the compost holds the water so well in the ground, I don't need to irrigate. And because I'm not irrigating, it just stays totally weed-free, because when the weed seed blows in on top of these dry wood chips on the top, they can't germinate. And the other nice feature is when you go to pick vegetables, it's not muddy. It's not got dirt all over. It's totally clean because I wasn't watering. And when you walk on it, it's nice and dry. There's no mud. It's just such an incredible benefit not having to irrigate continuously. And they noticed, like when we started getting some rains, all of a sudden these little weeds started popping up in places. So you see, those seeds were here all summer, but now that it's starting to rain, they're going to come up. I just take my rake and rake them out. It's not a problem. They don't have a lot of, a huge amount, and they're very easy to control. But it makes such a difference when you don't have to irrigate continuously as far as your weeding issues. Occasionally pests will come in nature and will defoliate a few trees every now and then, but not serious enough that it causes any great losses, and nature always overcomes.
I think if you follow organic principles, it's very rarely that your insect population, your negative insect population gets out of control. And of course, it doesn't matter if you spray organically, you're still going to kill beneficials, and so beneficial insects. So it's best to just deal with whatever damage you have and move on.
George Washington Carver, when people would ask him how to deal with a disease in their tree, he would say, well, you don't want to deal with a disease. You want to get the tree in good health and vigor, and it'll take out the disease. I think that's such a true statement, and it's so true about everything. And if you'll get a real healthy plant, as I have here, I don't have any insect problems. If a bug bites into my plant, he drowns because there's so much water there. He just is infused with it, and he wants cellulose and fiber, so he goes somewhere else to find a stressed, dehydrated plant to eat on, because he can't eat on mine because there's too much water. So if you have a healthy, vigorous plant, insects are not a problem. As plants became weaker because of chemical fertilizers, insects began to be very overpowering and would take out huge amounts of plants. And so they stepped up to the plate and created insecticides. What they didn't take into account was that the Creator designed everything in nature to be overcoming, and as these insecticides would come in contact with these insects, they would mutate and develop opposition to it, and the next generation, those insecticides didn't affect, and so it's not a problem. So they have to keep improving and strengthening the insecticides. Well, what's that has progressed to today is that the insecticides are so powerful, so potent, they're killing the plants. And so what they've done to solve that problem is now they're using genetically modified organisms where they're changing the DNA of the plant and putting the insecticide into the plant. Crop rotation. If you look at nature, plants go to seed and the seeds fall in the ground, and they do it every year, decade after decade, century after century, and it's not a problem. But when you cultivate and you have exposed ground, you've got to move crops around because you'll have disease issues and problems. I think I've got the classic example down here at my pond area, where it's a nice, good, low, wet spot. I've been growing potatoes now 16 years in a row in the same place, and they come out nice and clean every year. Today we're going to harvest the potatoes, and that's one of my favorite fun things to do because it's such a pleasant, surface to be on. The potatoes come out so clean and nice, and it's just fun, And as I'm harvesting, I'll also plant, and my harvesting and planting is all done at the same time, and it makes it so simple and easy. pH issues. I have over here in my herb garden, I've got blueberries, which everyone knows is a very acid-loving plant. But right next to it, I can grow Swiss chard or cucumbers or anything else that's alkaline, and it does well too. So here I see again all those things that we work so hard to correct: soil preparation, fertilization, irrigation, weed control, pest issues, crop rotation, pH issues. In nature, it's just all beautifully done by itself. And so I just enjoy having the convenience, and it just makes it so much easier.